Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. We're talking with my buddy Darrell on pitfalls to avoid. It is a great coaching conversation. I know you're going to love it. Before we jump into it, make sure to check out churchboom.org. If you've ever thought about being a coach, we've got a program for you. Church Boom Coaching Certification is online. You will learn all the practical ways to coach other pastors and leaders. You'll get all the tools you'll need, and you'll absolutely love the program. It will actually help you if you want. It can create a second income or even a second chapter for your life. So make sure to check that out at churchboom.org, our coaching certification program. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Instagram is church.boom. Facebook is Church Boom, and we put a lot of content up there as well. You'll absolutely love being a part of those platforms. But let's jump into the conversation now. I know you're going to enjoy it. Man, let's jump into it. Good to see you, man. How's everything going in your world?
Hey, man, I'm excited. We're grinding, trying to get ready for this church launch, January 26th. So, new church plant. So, that's consuming all of my time. Yeah.
New church plant.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Are you kind of relaunching with the original church you had, or what's your plan?
Well, actually, we shut down operations. We just took those who were left, created a brand new core team, started from scratch. So we didn't want to rebrand. We said, knowing what we know now, what we do differently in launching the church, and that's the tack we've taken. So this past year has been that journey, and we get to realize it in about 61 days now, I think it is.
Oh, my goodness. How awesome. Well, way to go, man. Look at you. That's good to hear. And, man, I'm believing God for big things, man. Let's go after it. So, well, hey, man, let's jump into it today. How can I serve you, man?
Absolutely. And actually, I want to really kind of focus on church planning since you've been there.
Yep.
At the start of South Hills. I really want to kind of find out, if you could do it all over again, tell me what are the three things that you would tell a church planner like myself going in to kind of set themselves up for success?
Yeah. Wow. There are several things I either would have done differently, or I'll add not only just do differently. I would say the things that I think people underestimate. One is the amount of money they need. Resources are really important. Finances are really important. The ability to launch healthy and right. The ability to fund the vision leading up to the launch and in the months to follow. Very important, the finances. And so I always say two things you need when launching a church: money and people. And so you got to have both of those.
Yeah.
So one is finances. Secondly is, one thing I always say is, like an apple, the bigger the core, the bigger the apple. Smaller the core, the smaller the apple. Build a big core. I tell people all the time, you got to build a big core. Arc, I've got a lot of friends over at Arc. Man, they don't even let you launch unless it's a certain size. I don't know what the current number is, but it isn't small. It's not like 12 people or 15 people. It's much, much larger. I would say that would be a second thing, is make sure that you have enough people. The next thing I would say is, don't just focus on the launch. Everybody focuses on the launch, and then when the launch happens, they have this sigh of relief. What a great day. I'm like, I actually think the work starts after that. So you almost have to look at it as kind of phase one, phase two. Phase one is, man, we're going to get prepared for launch. We're going to have an amazing launch. Phase two kicks in the day after the launch. And if I were you, I'd be looking at the next 90 days after the launch. And what would I do on, the next week? What would I do 30 days after that? What would I do 30 days after that? What would I do 30 days after that? What can I do to create life and energy and momentum to get that going? I mean, we had a great launch, but, what do we do after that? And so I think about, what kind of guests could we have that people actually care about? What could we do that would be fun and special? What could we do that would be different? Could we bring lunch trucks out, have music afterwards? Could I get the running back from the college team here to make an appearance? What could we do in that first 90 days after a launch. And I would think about that as well. So money, for sure. Secondly is the launch, or the amount of people, the bigger the core, the bigger the apple. And then the launch after the launch. And I guess I would add a bonus fourth one is make sure that your leadership, volunteers, and systems are in place that work. Make sure you have great volunteers, great leaders, and systems to the best of your ability. It's not going to be perfect, but to your best of your ability. Because nothing's worse than a re-grand opening. We didn't get right the first time, so we're trying again. You don't want that. So those are a few things that I would think about.
It's funny when you said when people ask me what do I spend my time on, I tell them it's two things: people and paper.
Yeah.
Run the team, paper, dollar bills, financial partner, because I see how critical it is, that critical mass in both
Yes.
of those elements, to really get that momentum. And on those lines, you actually kind of alluded to, and that was my second question. Looking back on either personal experience or in coaching or what you've seen with other planners, what are three or four things that you've seen them do that really kind of you would say, hey, I wouldn't do that again, or that's really going to cause you some problems long term?
Putting the wrong people in the wrong places. When desperation rises, standards fall. So the more desperate you get, like, we got to have someone leading that. We got to have someone doing that. The more desperate you get, the more that standard falls. And so now you put someone in a position that you probably know isn't the right person, which means you're setting yourself up for a very toxic, possibly a toxic situation if they get upset, difficult conversation that you have to have for them. Then after that difficult conversation, maybe they get angry. I don't know. All of that stuff that goes with it. Like I always say, it's a lot easier to get someone in ministry than it is to get them out. And so the I would say as a mistake is putting the wrong people in the wrong place because of desperation. I would rather start, and I always tell church planners, you're not, back in the day, you got to go we say back in the day, go back 20 years ago. The gas station wasn't AM, PM. The gas station was also the mechanic. He's also where you got your smog check. He's also where you got your tires rotated. Back in the day, the gas station did it all. Yeah. And then AM, PM, and all these other little, different gas stations came along. That's sort of a West Coast thing, AM, PM. But little small gas stations came along where they just had convenience stores and gas. And for a while, they were both existing. Now it's pretty much all convenience store type things. Here's the point I say all that is, don't try to be the gas station that supplies the rotating the tires and fix your engine and smog checks. You're not everything to everybody.
Yeah.
You're this. Go in, they get a little snack, they fill up their tank, see you next week. That's and what I say that is, don't try to do everything. Do 2 or 3 things really, really well. Put on an amazing Sunday morning experience and figure out a pathway by which people get involved in the church. Those are important. If I was looking at Sunday morning, I would say, have great services, great worship, great message. Mm-hmm. Make sure the environment's clean. Make sure the next steps are real clear and people are taking those next steps, and have an amazing children's department. Okay, what about men's ministry, women's ministry, banquets, teas? Personally, I'm not worried about any of that. I want to put on an amazing Sunday morning experience, and I want to get people involved in the life of the church. If I narrowed it down to 2 things, it would be that. Put on an amazing Sunday morning experience and get people involved in the life of the church faster, because people that get involved faster will stay around more often. Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking about putting them in leadership. I think that's where the mistake is. So mistake is desperation rises, standards fall. The mistake is that we put people in the wrong place, in the wrong area. Then we have to have that difficult conversation. The mistake is that we don't put on quality. And I think that we need to put on the best that we can. Those are some of the mistakes that I think that people see, and things that I think they should avoid.
Awesome. Thanks. Along those lines, when you look at leadership and putting the right people in the right place, how's that balance work? For instance, like when you're launching, you have a lot of new people coming in, and you want to have people in places, but you also don't want to run that risk. So it's that fine line. That's one of the things we're dealing with right now, trying to
Yeah.
figure out identifying who's gifted, who we can put in this place. But one of the
Right.
things I tell them, I said, listen, we want to be fast, flexible, and forgiving. We want to
Yeah.
respond fast to what God tells us to do, be flexible so everybody knows you ain't moved around, but be forgiving if we mess up with you. But that's
Yeah.
the thing we're trying to figure out now. Like, how do you determine? Because you got people coming in, you got some in the core, you got new people coming in the core. Um, so right now we're just saying everybody's at a volunteer position, but what would be some good steps to kind of start out putting some people, because you got to have somebody run children's ministry or
Yep.
first touch.
Yeah. Well, again, going back to that sort of gas station analogy, don't try to do too much. Don't do a lot, because the more you do, the more it demands greater amount of leadership. Don't try to do everything. Don't try to have a women's this and a men's this and a tea and a this and a that and whatever, all these functions. It's like, no, we're going to put on an amazing Sunday morning experience. And we're going to get people involved in the life of the church. I think that's a matter of minimizing it as much as possible. You can minimize the damage by minimizing how many things you start. That's one thing. So I would consider that very much. I would consider that. A second thing I think is you can have people that you're and I don't know all the situation and everything you're doing, but I'm a big fan whenever possible to beta test. Now, what does that mean by beta test? I don't tell them it's beta test. I just say, look, would you be a part of the launch team? And that means that, would you be a launch leader? Well, what does that mean? Oh, that means that you're going to help us launch on the day, and you're going to help us for the first 90 days, or you're going to help us for the first 6 months. What that tells me is at the end of that time, I can invite them to continue. Hey, you know what, man? You did so good. How would you like to continue? Or thank you for being part of the launch team. God bless you. The 90 days is up. Either way, I win, because they didn't get all mad at me.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, man, I've got a few permanent areas, but I got a couple areas I'm just trying to get off the ground a little bit. I want to test the waters, however you want to word it. Would you mind being a launch leader? It doesn't mean forever. It just means for 3 months, 4 months. For some people, you can test them out. For some people that are like, hey, man, I'm really, really busy, but, man, you're like, they're a high-level leader. You get 3 months out of them. Either way, you win. But it avoids difficult conversations of like, well, you're not really doing a good job and you're out here. It avoids the difficult conversations.
I like that title, launch leader, because it puts
Yeah.
a definite time period on it. So you fulfill that obligation. Thank you. We appreciate you got us to this point. You know?
Yeah, exactly. We're done. Now, God bless you.
I like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What books or resources would you recommend from your experience as a planter and working with planters? If you had to say these are two or three, books or resources that you should access to make sure you got a good foundation, can you think of some offhand?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer that with a no and a yes. I haven't read a church planting book in forever. Only because I don't live in that space as much as I used to. So I spend my time learning other things. However, the two areas that I would go to that have a ton of resources would be ARC, ARC, and CMN, Church Multiplication Network. One's a non-denominational, one's an Assemblies of God, but both of them have books, have ideas, have resources, things you can download for free. They have a lot of stuff. Those are the two places. If I was in your shoes, I'd be saying, what does CMN have that's free for me? What advice do they give? What videos can I watch? What books do they recommend? Same thing with ARC, ARC, and CMN. Those are the two, in my opinion, the most prominent church planting organizations right now.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, I think they find those really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, One of the things that, as we get ready to plant, legal things. What have you seen or things do you see on the horizon maybe in your conversations that churches are facing from a legal perspective, because obviously we want to make sure that we don't have any problems with the government.
Yep.
Obviously payrolls and stuff like that. But anything on the horizon that you're hearing, even that might affect churches, that churches need to be forward thinking a bit about before it happens.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I would say is I'm not a legal person at all, and I don't like giving legal advice because that's just not who I am, and I don't want someone to get hurt by my bad advice on legal stuff. However, one thing I think people underestimate is insurance, liability insurance, or for staff. For you want to create a barrier between you and someone that get mad at you. So for me, that's not so much a legal conversation as much as a protection for you, to know that, hey, I've got insurance in case someone trips in my building, in case someone, does something, that they shouldn't have done morally, sexually, whatever, underage situation, all that stuff that people deal with. I've got insurance, and I've got insurance for all of that to cover me. It's an expense, but it's a lot more expensive when you don't have it. And you want to make sure that. I think some churches underestimate that. I think that they don't really think through that they need to be covered in that way. And I would say that would be one of the things. I think people have to be very mindful. So I have an attorney that we use all the time. Mindful of LGBTQT. I think if I got all the letters right, you have to be mindful of how you handle maybe situations like that. The bathroom use, I don't know how you refer to situations. I think you have to be mindful of it. It's not that you have to waver on your stance or waver on your belief. Just be mindful of it. And I think, man, whenever there's a situation like that, I always reach out to the attorney. All right, here's a situation. How do we handle it? What are we allowed to post on a wall? Not post. What are we allowed to say in an email? Not say. What are we allowed to say publicly? Not say. I mean, I don't want to bend the scripture. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't want to do something silly that could have easily been avoided and get myself in trouble. Like, well, that was dumb. I shouldn't even have said that. That had nothing to do with the biblical stance. It was just a dumb way of doing it. And now I'm in trouble. You want to make sure to do that. So I'm a big fan of having insurance in place. I'm a big fan of having an attorney that I can talk to anytime I want to make sure that we don't get in trouble. In this world, fast changing, wrestling and dealing with things we would have never imagined we would have dealt with 15 years ago. Yeah. Now we have to deal with it. And so how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it in the right way? How do you handle it? How do you address it? However you want to say it. I think those are important things. So those two areas.
That, man, especially, well, I thought, but not to that degree. Like, we have liability insurance, but I'm also wondering, like, is there like key leader insurance or, personal insurance that you need to have? Almost, the things that you never thought about, like it is something that they could sue me personally for, or even in hiring practices, since every state is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, so that's called, there's two things. One's called key man insurance. Key man insurance is, especially if you have a debt in a building and all that, if something happens to you, the building gets paid off. That's awesome. D&O, D, the letter D, and the letter O. D&O is directors and officers insurance. You want to have that. That protects you, and that protects your board. Because you don't want people coming after you. You don't want people coming after your board. So you have directors and officers in insurance. So you get a hold of, there's like, I don't know, there's Guidestone, I think, has some stuff for churches. There's plenty of them out there. Hey, man, I want some coverage for our church. I want coverage for our D&O. Help me out and get us set up. You got to have that. It's an expense. I get it. But, man, you don't want your board, people to come after the board. I mean, that would be horrible. Or to come after you, come after the board, come after the church. You want a wall between, people that, get sue happy between you and those people. You want the wall for the church, for you, and for the board.
That's good. Yeah.
Very important stuff. So I wouldn't underestimate that at all. And I wouldn't underestimate having a lawyer in your back pocket. Just, hey, how would you handle this? How would you deal with this? Because it's going to come up. Stuff's going to come up that you're like, I don't even know how to handle this. And I know what I believe about it, but if I handle it wrong, so how do I handle it? So,
Whew, it's a lot, isn't it?
Fun stuff. Fun stuff.
The side of pastoring and planning a church that you never think about it until you're in that in your life.
Oh yeah, these are all the things I didn't learn in Bible college. So, well, man, dude, anything else? I think we're winding down our time.
Kind of covers those key points. As always, I appreciate you, such a wealth of knowledge, and I think the Church Boom is one of the best podcasts I've ever come across. I the pastor's pointing like, hey, you got to get on it. So I send it to everybody, like, start listening to this because it's golden.
Well, thank you for spreading the word and sending it out to people. I really appreciate that. And good to see you, man. Anything I can ever do for you, just give me a holler anytime.
All right. Take care. Good seeing you.
Have a good day, bud. We'll see you, man.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for checking out today's podcast with my buddy Darrell. And what a great conversation we had about avoiding pitfalls. I want to remind you to check out churchboom.org and check out the coaching certification program. If you've ever thought about being a coach, this program is for you and you will love it. It will help you to create possibly a second income if that's what you want or desire. Also, it'll help you create a second chapter in your life if you desire that as well. So make sure to check that out at churchboom.org, our coaching certification program. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Instagram is church.boom and Facebook is church Boom. Look forward to seeing you on the next Fly on the Wall podcast.